As the cliche goes, April showers bring May flowers. But usually what comes after is the heat and dryness of summer. Hello again, Essay here. And before the hot weather of the holiday shows up, you should indulge in my new short story, The White Cat, a free exclusive on Substack. The links are down below in description. Join Margot Thompson, a beautiful stage actress and recent widow who finds salvation in the form of a white cat during a night of terror. While checking out my oddball thriller, remember that my Glitch series is still available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The links are down below in the description. While you'll find my peculiar story about a white pussy entertaining, that doesn't mean I'm out of ideas. I still have more stories coming down the pike, so as long as I don't run into any mishaps, you'll see those stories as well. Now let's get back to the video.
Your Excellency, here's your water. What in the world's the matter? Your Excellency, I thought you left.
Oh, no, I don't leave.
But I saw you with my own eyes.
Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
Hello again. Essay here. Anyone who has watched movies as long as probably has seen their share of all sorts of genres. You know, where it be crime dramas, comedies, horror films, stuff like that, sci-fi stuff. And of course, anyone who's a bit of a cinephile probably is familiar with special effects. And of course, most people don't realize special effects have been around for a long time. It wasn't started with, like Spielberg or George Lucas, okay? Just letting you know. Indeed, one of the first FX people that ever existed was this guy named Clark. He used to work for Thomas Edison, back when Edison started one of his early motion picture studios back at the end of the 19th century. Yeah. In fact, one of the films that the guy Clark worked on still exists today. It's an old video depicting the execution of Mary Queen of Scots. If I remember correctly, yeah, this film was made in the 1890s, and it's probably the oldest surviving film that shows special effects. And of course, anyone who remembers that old French film, Trip to the Moon, probably says, oh yeah, the one where the guy fires artillery shell into the moon's eye. Yeah, that old movie. And then of course, people my age grew up watching old Flash Gordon and King Kong films where they basically use stop motion. And I have to admit, I like those films. They're pretty good. I mean, of course, compared to the stuff that's been made, long since then, you say, the visual effects are kind of dodgy. But hey, the films were entertaining, regardless. Indeed, anyone who's familiar with Ray Harryhausen definitely knows what I'm talking about. I mean, that guy, he made a lot of really great films. Like Jason the Argonauts, Mysterious Island, First Men in the Moon. Like I said, that guy worked on a lot of films, and his films, stand up pretty well even in the modern era. And then of course you have old Stanley Kubrick. I mean, because would you believe to this day people think that because Kubrick worked on 2001: A Space Odyssey, he somehow faked the moon landing. And you say, wait, what? Yeah, true story. I mean, I remember first hearing that story back in the 80s that there was a rumor that floated around that the moon landing was faked and that supposedly Stanley Kubrick was involved in it because if you know the history, 2001 came out in 1968 and the moon landing happened a year later. And people thought that if you look at 2001, particularly the scenes with the people on the moon, and then look at this actual footage from the moon landing, people said they're almost interchangeable. And I'm thinking, I don't think so, player. I mean, Kubrick's a great director. I ain't denying that. But the very idea that he somehow worked with the federal government to fake the moon landing, I mean, really, dude? Or as Snoop would say, really, nigga? I mean, no. Though I have to admit, apparently Kubrick had heard the rumor, and he basically made a joke about it. And you say a joke? Yeah. If you ever saw The Shining, there's a scene in the film where the little boy, Danny, he's walking around in that spooky haunted hotel, and he's wearing a t-shirt that says Apollo 11 on it, with a little generic shape of a rocket. And you say, what? You say, wait, what? Yeah. And I remember hearing many years later that Kubrick deliberately made the little kid actor wear that shirt deliberately as a joke. Apparently, Kubrick heard the rumor about him faking the moon landing, and then he basically put that in his film like a whole decade later, basically as a troll. Long before the internet existed. Okay, so anyone who's ever seen The Shining remembers that scene, remembers this. Kubrick, great director, but guess what? He was also a troll. Okay, are we clear now? Yeah. But still, while Kubrick was a great director, it was probably Spielberg and Lucas who probably took visual effects, to it into outer space, in every sense of the word. And we can't forget about James Cameron. Oh no, we can't. I mean, anyone who saw Titanic would think to this day that he actually, built a full-blown copy of that ship and actually sank it just to film it, which is technically half true. Yeah, it's technically half true, because Cameron, he did build a 1/3 size replica, and he basically used a lot of movie magic to make it look like it sank in the ocean. Just saying. But of course, anyone who's familiar with AI is familiar with deep fakes. And of course, there's more than a few deep fakes floating around right now. Including, there's a real famous one where it shows what looks like Tom Cruise acting a fool. And before you even mention the interview he did with Oprah, no, that's not a deep fake, that's real. But there's other videos floating around of Tom Cruise acting a fool, but they're not real. It's basically all artificial intelligence. But this video is not really about, special effects in movies. It's about the news media. And you say, what does apples have to do with oranges? I'm getting to that part. Recently, anyone who's been paying attention noticed that old Sleepy Joe has been, Well, showing his age. I mean, let's not pretend he's not a spring chicken. I mean, the guy, let's just say this. If he was anybody else, he'll be at home right now collecting his Social Security check. Okay? Are we clear? All right. Well, anyway, somebody, we don't know who, but somebody's been putting out the word that any video you see of old Sleepy Joe mumbling and stumbling, well, it's not him. And you say, wait, what? Yeah, that's right. Now I'm going to show you a snippet of video with from the 5 show, you know, that show on Fox News, and they get into the nitty gritty of this. Now I only heard about this like a couple of days ago, and I said like, wait, what? But anyway, they'll hit the hammer right on nail, the hammer right on the nail. Okay, are you ready? Here we go.
When Joe Biden can unleash his attack dogs in the media to scare off anybody who dares question his mental fitness. The press now helping the White House push its latest desperate spin on the Biden brain freeze videos. They're cheap fakes, despite them being unedited. The binder has declared that any video of the president looking cooked must have been manipulated, twisted in a way to make it seem like Joe is feeble and lost. Of course, the Biden sycophants in the media are latching on to the cheap fake talking point.
There's a growing and insidious trend in right-wing media. It is to take highly misleading and selectively edited videos of President Biden to cast doubt on President Biden's fitness for office.
The Republican accounts circulating many of the clips responded, claiming the videos are unedited and promised to keep posting them.
A lie.
I want to talk about the Joe Biden that Republicans want you to see and the pipeline of videos that aren't telling the full truth.
We've been worried for years about AI deepfakes. Cheap fakes are a little bit simpler. They're cheap. They're just distorted, out of context videos.
These are cheap fakes, what the White House and Biden people call them. I think we need to all be a little careful about what it is that we put out there.
Greg, is the next step when they start suppressing the Biden videos like they did the laptop?
Well, I just have to say, how does it feel to be taken out of context? You know, where were these anti-hoaxers when there was the Fine People hoax, the drinking bleach hoax, the koi pond hoax, the migrant kids in cages hoax, the Border Patrol whipping migrants hoax, the lab leak is a conspiracy theory hoax, the Russian collusion hoax, Don't Say Gay bill hoax, did I leave any? The P-tape hoax. Where were they? There's a difference. When we see something, we vet it. The media does not, because they're the engine behind their hoaxes as long as they go in one direction. The Dems in the media are lucky we don't match their dishonesty. We could, we don't. We don't have to, because basically we don't have to make up crap. Apparently, though, they hold us to a higher standard than they hold themselves. Only they can cheat because they believe they have a moral high ground, and that moral high ground allows them to do anything immoral they want. They can call you Hitler, they can interfere with elections, they can wage unprecedented lawfare, they can say you're banning books, they can say you're xenophobic, they can say you don't have any compassion for the poor or the homeless, they can say anything. They can lie because they have the moral high ground. The most dangerous person is one who excuses their bad actions in the name of the good, especially when the good never materializes.
Very well said, Greg.
Thank you, Jesse.
They can say anything, Sandra. Well, the one thing they haven't said is what specifically was deepfaked.
I was thinking the same thing when we were just going through the segment and playing some of the network coverage. Why not play the original and play the edits and let people decide for themselves? The reason is because the original is what we show. We got a lot of these videos for the first time during our hours, and we are very careful to play them out in their entirety. You're seeing it happen here. So if someone wants to decide that maybe he was distracted and, maybe he needed help getting called over, people can decide for themselves. We're playing the videos so that you can see. What really bothered me during the coverage yesterday was while we were talking about this, we dipped into live coverage at the White House of the first press briefing in 3 weeks. So we hadn't heard Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, weigh in on these videos as they accumulated. She went on a very aggressive defense of the videos. And she used the word manipulated, that these video, almost like we were, somebody was putting the head of the president on somebody else's body or vice versa, which is just not the case. The dancing video we played out on stage with Obama, and people can decide for themselves if they're concerned about what they see. What probably everybody can agree on is that it's not totally normal to have another world leader come and usher you around on a stage or out in the, on a major international ground like the Italian prime minister there did with the paratroopers. So it's the responsibility of the media to cover it, and we can play it out and people can decide for themselves.
Have you seen a video that's been manipulated, Harold, that makes Joe Biden look feeble and frail?
Yeah, I've seen things. Look, there are groups of
Have we ever
voters.
played it on this air?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so.
And if we have, we certainly didn't do it intentionally. I think some of the things that we talk about, what I mean, Judge, is that there may be things that people use that they don't know, and none of our producers or the network would do anything like that. My larger point is that there are a number of voters who get their news, who access and consume news through unconventional ways that are different from what they did 10, 20, 30, I would even argue 10 years ago. And online is one way people do it. And I think both sides, not just including these campaigns, but both sides are going to utilize and might utilize AI in a way that is manipulative. And we've got to figure out ways. It's a larger question than this right here. Two, I don't like it when either side does it, Jesse. I mean, I don't like it when I'm a Democrat. When Democrats do it against Republicans and they do it falsely and maliciously, or when Republicans may do it against Democrats. I go back to the first segment, the conversation the judge and I were having about when the judge made clear some of the things that President Trump was saying in this rally here about things he did differently or things that he did as president are different now. That's where the debate should be, and we should all be willing to denounce anytime AI is used in a false manipulative way.
We're not even talking about AI. No one has AI'd Joe Biden and made him look bad in any network or anywhere that we've seen, Judge.
No, they're talking about cheap fakes, not deep fakes.
Right.
Okay, the deep fake being the AI. But look, when you talk about both sides, I don't think it's both sides. The political correctness started with the Democrats when they wanted us to say things in a certain way. We were not allowed to say there was an invasion at the border. If we were, xenophobe and all this other nonsense. And then we couldn't talk to each other on social media. And then, they started gaslighting us. And then it was the Russia collusion. I mean, you want to talk about fakes? Let's talk about that. And you know what? When Mitch McConnell froze twice, both the Republicans and the conservatives and the Democrats, Republicans said this is a problem. Mitch McConnell got whatever medical treatment he needed to deal with it, and that was the end of it. You don't see the Democrats do that. All the Democrats can do is say, you got to shut up, you can't say it that way, and you must have changed that. Look, guys, it's a pool camera it is a pool camera that is putting this stuff on air. Nobody's editing it. The only thing that's going on is Joe Biden's losing his mind, stumbling, mumbling, and tripping. That's all.
Jesse, can I just make a simple point that Joe Biden ran on one simple fake fact, that Trump called Nazis fine people. When anybody called that out on the media and said it wasn't true, they were putting their careers in danger. There were only a handful of people that said, Trump didn't say that, Trump didn't say that. And still, CNN and other networks would run for it. And if you called it out, you got harassed. So this is bullshit.
Right. And now they're running on another hoax that he's going to be a dictator for life. So.
Yeah. We can only dream.
Back-to-back hoaxes. Ahead, Doctor.
Okay, you saw that, right? Now, of course, anyone who's been paying attention, and we're not just talking about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, whether it be Sleepy Joe sitting there at some Juneteenth event, whatever, or him, playing patty cake with those G7 knuckleheads, and of course, recently where he was passing a hat around with all those DNC types trying to get some money. Well, let's just say that from what we know, none of those incidents were conducted inside of a computer. I mean, Sleepy Joe did have a Juneteenth event at the White House, and he was there. Unless, of course, that wasn't actually him and that was some body double. And he was at the G7 meeting. Unless, of course, that too was a body double. And then, of course, he was in Hollywood with Barack Hussein Obama passing a hat around trying to get some money together. Unless, of course, that was a body double. Now, if those three events did not have a body double of Joe Biden, then I guess that was him. And if that was him, explain to me on God's green earth how any of that could have been a deep fake. Or what's the word that the Democrats basically just made up on the fly? A cheap fake? This reminds me of an old Marx Brothers film. Can't remember if it was Duck Soup or Night at the Opera or Day at the Races, but it was but anyone who's familiar with the Marx Brothers knows those clowns were goofy. I mean, not as goofy as the Three Stooges. I mean, I like Three Stooges. I grew up watching the Three Stooges. I like those guys. Those guys are goofy. But the Marx Brothers were nearly as goofy. I mean, Harpo, Chico, of course, Groucho. I mean, all those guys were acting like knuckleheads. But anyway, there's a great scene in one of their films where Groucho was caught practically with his pants down, metaphorically speaking. And when he's confronted with what he's doing, his reply was, "Are you going to believe me or your lying eyes?" It's a classic line. I mean, it's been floating around for like 60, 70 years. No joke. Well, that's basically what the news media is doing. They're trying to gaslight people, trying to say, oh, those videos to see of old Sleepy Joe, that's not him. That's some AI deepfake. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, really? I mean, you must think that ordinary people who are not even political, people just, working too hard for shit pay, on their, and then coming home to a bad TV dinner made by Swanson or Stouffer's, and then they sit down and then they turn on the damn TV because people who work really hard are not sitting there looking at their damn smartphone watching TikTok videos. Okay, I mean that's for the Zoomers and the damn stupid Gen Alpha crowd. Slightly the older crowd, like the Boomers and the Gen Xers that are still running around. Yeah, they do things the old-fashioned way, and they're gonna turn on the TV and see Joe Biden bumbling and stumbling over the place. Now let's not pretend. Most of the damn legacy media, all the alphabet networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, they're not going to show that footage. Now, Fox News, they do show the footage. Now, of course, you say, oh, but Fox are partisan. Yeah, it doesn't make them liars. Just saying. But of course, the younger crowd, they see this stuff all over YouTube, all over Twitter, now called X, and they laugh, they snicker. Because when old Sleepy Joe was down there at the Normandy beaches, he was sitting there doing squats right in the middle of the ceremony, and everybody, at least all these young kids, were sitting there saying, Biden pooped his pants, he pooped his pants. Yeah, they're sitting there laughing. They think it's funny. And then the older people, that eventually it got to the older people, and some of them who do have smartphones and can navigate themselves around Twitter X, they eventually saw those videos too, and they laughed. But then the news media they practically blew their tops. Say, how dare you laugh at Sleepy Joe? And it's almost, and then you say, why are they getting all upset for? Unless, of course, they're emotionally invested with old Sleepy Joe staying in the White House. Yeah. And now they're going to sit there and make up fairy tales saying that, oh, are you gonna believe us or your lying eyes? Yeah, just like Groucho. But guess what? We're not in the middle of a Marx Brothers film, okay? We're in IRL, in real life. And the fact that these people, the news media, actually went that route to try to cover for Biden, it's sad. It's pathetic. It really is. I mean, let's not pretend, okay? Joe Biden is an old man. A really old man. Now, of course, there are some people who are old who seem to be functioning. Maybe not on all cylinders, but a lot more than Joe Biden. I mean, for example, how many people are familiar with old Mel Brooks? Yeah. And you say, wait, he's still alive? Yeah. The guy's in his 90s, but he's still alive. And the last interview I saw with him, the guy, he was there. His brain was working. And he wasn't mumbling and stumbling over the place. In fact, at the time when I saw him, he was talking about a sequel he was slapping together for, I think it was, History of the World Part 1? A movie he made back, I think came out in 1980. I saw that film. It was silly. Then all Mel Brooks films are silly. But yeah, he was talking about, making a sequel, and wait for it, Mel Brooks was talking about making a sequel to Spaceballs. But then he said that while he talked to the other actors who were in the first film, he said that he reached out to Rick Moranis, because if you saw Spaceballs, you probably remember Rick Moranis was playing, was it the Black Helmet? They couldn't call him Darth Vader, but they called him, I think, the Black Helmet. But yeah. And Rick Moranis didn't get back to him. Now, would I be willing to watch a sequel to Spaceballs? If it's good, if it ain't woke, yeah, I wouldn't mind watching it. But that's just one example of how you can deal with someone who's really old and yet their brains still work. Problem is, you can't say the same thing with old Joe Biden. Indeed, some people are compared Joe Biden to old eternal man himself, Mitch McConnell, the senator from Kentucky, because there's videos of him from last year where, just like Sleepy Joe, he was at the rostrum trying to give a speech about something, and the guy, like, someone hit the freeze frame, and the guy just froze on the camera. He didn't move, he didn't blink, nothing. And people was wondering, what's going on? And people who were paying attention saw that happen twice on two separate occasions, where the guy was talking normally for an old dude, and then he just stopped. And multiple people, smart people, said that he was having some kind of brain seizure. And that's why Mitch McConnell stopped. And now, when you apply that knowledge over to Sleepy Joe, what we've been seeing is that the guy, when we see him freeze like that, he's having a seizure. And you say, well, some people have seizures all the time. Yeah, I know, because I know that certain people, I think they're epileptics, if you flash a strobe light in their face at a certain cycling rate, it will cause them to have an epileptic seizure. I remember reading about that years ago. So don't be going to some people who have epilepsy and take a strobe light and say, hey, look at this. There was a strobe light in their face. Don't be doing that, okay? Because people have epileptic seizures. It ain't pretty to look at. I mean, the people, they freeze up, they fall over, they start foaming at the mouth. I mean, it's really not a good sight. So don't be doing something like that. Don't do that. But yeah, Biden is clearly having seizures. Now, next question is what's going to happen next? Well, if he keeps having seizures, let's not pretend this old Sleepy Joe might be lining himself up to have a stroke. And you say, so what? Are you kidding me? He's president of the United States. We can't have someone sitting behind a Resolute desk playing around with the damn nuclear codes, having seizures, okay? And having like mini strokes, okay? We can't allow that, okay? Because guess what? Wait for it. You ready? This happened before. Because anyone's familiar with President Wilson? Yeah, the guy who was president during the First World War. Well, even though it came out long after his death, the guy, he had a major stroke during his second term as president. And wait for it, he never recovered. And you say, wait, what? Yeah. It's well documented now, but at the time when he was president, they kept it under wraps. And then you say, wait, the vice president, the cabinet, even his wife? Yeah. Remember, that was back in between 1916 and 1920. And didn't have like CBS News or NBC News or, oh my God, the internet back then. So it wasn't like people walking around with damn smartphones going into the damn presidential, into the Oval Office with their smartphone filming Woodrow Wilson laid out with his tongue hanging out going, no. Okay? And if I remember correctly, Wilson was laid out for the last, I think, 2 years of his presidency. And then you say, well, didn't he give speeches? Not during those last 2 years. And then you say, well, who's running government? Precisely. Who indeed? Now, there was some information, unconfirmed, that Wilson's wife actually sat in on cabinet meetings. And you say, why? She wasn't elected president. Precisely. Precisely. Now, some of you right now saying, didn't they have the 25th Amendment back then? No. Back then, they didn't have any mechanism for removing the president if the president basically, his brains basically bubble out of his ears. Nah. There was no legal mechanism to remove a mentally incapacitated president. But then at your point, you say, we didn't have a vice president? Yeah, they had a vice president. And then you probably say, well, couldn't the vice president has taken charge of the country? Technically, probably not legally. And then you say, well, that's no excuse. I mean, the President Wilson is out of action, and they got his wife sitting in the cabinet meetings. And of course, right now you're probably saying, that don't sound right. And guess what? You're right. It doesn't sound right. But I guess back in those days, unlike nowadays, those people who ran the federal government were a lot more honest in the sense they didn't want to do anything that was not written down in the U.S. What do you call it? The United States. Was it? Yeah, United States Code. The book that tells you all the federal laws. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay. So there was no actual law on the books about what you do when the president's out of action. So I guess during those last 2 years of Wilson's administration, the people who were officially supposed to be in charge were just kind of winging it. And then, of course, he left office and then he died not long afterwards. Now, of course, in the present day, could they pull the same stunt? If the people who are in present day White House are just generally dishonest scumbags? Yep. And then, of course, at this point, you'll say, what if he dies before the election? Well, I guess two things will happen. You'll have President cackling Harris, and then, of course, they'll likely have an election where she basically will run by default. And, of course, that happened before, too, because back in the 68 election, everyone thought Bobby Kennedy was a shoo-in for the presidency. And, of course, as you know, he got himself shot. But then, after he got shot, and LBJ already bowed out and said, "I am not running," who was left? The Vice President of the United States under LBJ, Hubert Humphrey. Yeah, had a little brain freeze on there for a second. Sorry about that. Yeah, and of course, Humphrey didn't win. Nixon won. But yeah, that could very well happen. I mean, old Biden finally kicks the bucket right in the middle of this upcoming election. Cackling Harris becomes president, and then she runs against Trump, and thus Trump ends up in the pokey, which I'm not going to get into. And then Trump wins against Cackling Harris, and then that's it. But the absolute craven dishonesty by the news media is something that you just didn't see in the 20th century. Now, yes, you did have partisan hacks with a press card. I mean, let's not pretend, okay? For example, there was that clown that used to work for New York Times back in the 1930s, who was a foreign correspondent assigned to the Soviet Union. And he was well aware of all of Stalin's excesses, but because the guy it came out much later, the guy was a closet communist, he didn't report on any of that. None of it. It only came out long after the guy had left, the news business, that it came out that the guy was basically a collaborator with the Stalinist regime in Russia. But still, yeah. You didn't see this kind of mess in the news media of the 20th century. I mean, if a damn political leader was basically, shitting the bed, metaphorically speaking, and the news media found out, they didn't keep it a secret. Didn't matter if you had a D next to your name or R next to your name. Usually, if somebody screwed up, usually you found out about it. And this was back during the pre-internet era too, I might add. But the modern, mainstream media, these people are a joke. I mean, let's not pretend, okay? They shouldn't even be called journalists. They're basically propagandists. And outside of Fox News and I guess maybe the New York Post and I guess the Washington Times, I suppose, these people are all in the bed with the DNC. Therefore, they're not going to be honest, especially when it comes to someone with a D next to their name. So there you go. Yep. The problem really isn't Joe Biden. The problem is the so-called, and I do mean so-called journalists, who is clearly doing their own version of Groucho Marx. Yep. These people are a joke. Let's not pretend that's what they are. A joke. Well, that's all I have to say about these knuckleheads trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes about Joe Biden and his problems. That's my opinion.